Hello everyone, welcome to this course of data warehousing. Today we will discuss about the introduction to data warehousing. So, let us discuss what is data warehousing. So, data warehouse, it is a process of collecting huge amount of data, but that data should be electronic data. And the aim of collecting this data is that in future whenever it is required, we can use this electronic data for reporting, for ad hoc queries, and to take some important decisions. Now, we may have a question from where the data gets collected, and we collect the data to store in the data warehouse. See, the data comes from various locations, various sources, and this data warehouse, it connects information from multiple data sources. Those data sources may exist within individual business units transactional database. What it means? That suppose we are going to create one data warehouse for a particular organization, and that organization deals with different subject areas. They have their individual departments. For example, in a manufacturing industry, we may have HR department, we may have operation department, admin department, and so on. This way, the data warehouse will collect the information from all the business units. The business unit means nothing but the individual departments of that organizations. Now, these departments definitely store their data into some database tables, and they use some traditional data management software. For example, they can use the MySQL or the Oracle. So, this way they prepare, or they may have their own transactional database. Now, if we are going to create a data warehouse, then we have to collect the information or collect the data which are electronic data from these transactional databases. Now, as we know that in the transactional databases, we prefer to have normalization, we prefer to apply the normalization on the data. It means we make join multiple tables so that redundant information can be reduced. However, in data warehouse, we prefer to store the data in denormalized structure. Now, denormalization will increase the redundancy. However, it will reduce the complexity of the data structure, the complexity of the database structure. It will reduce the number of joins. Because we apply the denormalization on the data which is stored in the data warehouse, it increases the performance by decreasing the complexity of the queries, and it is possible because we have reduced number of joins in different tables. Now, see this, the data that we store in the data warehouse, that data must conform some specific business rules. It means we have to validate the data before we store the data in our data warehouse. If we are going to create a data warehouse for a particular organization, that data has to have some relevance with that particular organization. If I am going to create a data warehouse for a manufacturing industry, that data warehouse will contain the data, or it will store the data only which are validate, which are some valid data. Now, the data contains the historical data in the data warehouse. Now, the historical data will derived from either the transactional database from each individual unit of the organization, or the data can be collected from heterogeneous data sources. The data warehouse will separate the workload into two parts. One is the transactional load and other is the analysis load. It means we may use the data for performing some transactional operations, for example, create, update, delete, those crude operations, and also we may use it for analysis purpose, so that we can prepare some report and we can take some business decisions based on our analysis. This way, the data warehouse consolidates data from variety of sources. The environment that belongs to the data warehouse, it includes some terms like RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, ETL solution, extraction, transformation and load, statistical analysis tools. We may use some tools like MATLAB or SPSS, client analysis tools like CMS, data mining capabilities. We can use and we can apply some machine learning tools or machine learning algorithms on top of the data that is stored in the data warehouse. And reporting tools, we can use some visualization tools like Tableau or QlikView, and those tools are will work on the data that is stored in our data warehouse. The data warehouse has some features like subject oriented, integrated, consistent, non-volatile, and it shows the evolution over time. Subject oriented, it means the data warehouse will contain the data from different subject areas. As I mentioned earlier, that data can come from HR department or admin department or operation department, and finally the data has to be integrated, because to run one organization all the departments should cooperate with each other. This way the data that we are going to store in the data warehouse must be integrated. There should not be any confusion or there should not be any discrepancies between the data from different departments, and it should be consistent. Data should be consistent. Once we store the data, we are not going to disturb it anymore if it is not very much essential. It is non-volatile, so the data will not change frequently. It shows evolution over time. The data that we store in the data warehouse, from that data we can find the trends of the business, how our business is performing in the last couple of years. There should be some time period, and over that time period we can find out the trend of our business. The data warehouse, it supports our management in variety of ways. For example, it can help our management in decision making process, in business intelligence and investigation of KPIs, the key performance indicators. And if there are some issues in any of the operations inside the business or inside the organization, then it will find out the root cause of the failure of those operations, or it will find out why the particular subject or particular department is not able to perform it up to the limit. This way, data warehouse helps the end users to understand and enhance their organization's performance, that is called KPI, key performance indicator. So it will help us to determine the key performance indicators of the organization. And basically data warehouse is mostly used for analytic and query purpose rather than the transaction processing, because we can perform any transactional operations on our normal RDBMS. On the other hand, the data warehouse, as it collects the data from variety of sources, even if it contains the data from historical as well as recent time period, but still we will prefer to use data warehouse for analysis purpose only, and whatever the question we may have, whatever the results we need, we may like to execute the query on top of the data, and that query will contain some analytic functions. For example, max, mean, average, these are the business queries that we perform on top of the data that is stored in data warehouse. These are the possible data sources in data warehouse. The base system means the main organization, external applications. Our organization may have some third party applications, or it may deal with some other organization or applications on daily basis or monthly basis or weekly basis. Then third party data like demographic data, survey data and census data, these are also the data sources that we use for data warehouse. Other data sources typically transactions, production, human resources, etc. So these are the different data sources which are used to collect the data for our data warehouse. So basically our data that we store in the data warehouse can come from inside our organization, and also the third party applications or the outside organization if and only if it has direct or indirect relationship of our organization. To summary of today's lecture, these are the points that we have got till now. What is data warehouse? Data warehouse is the collection of huge amount of electronic data. That data can be stored in Excel file, or it can be stored in the database tables, or it can be from different social media applications. What are the uses of data warehouse? The data warehouse data is used typically for reporting, query and decision making process. And as we have already discussed, what are the different data sources from where we can collect the data and then we can integrate those data. The data can come from individual business units transactional databases. Even if we prefer to have denormalization in our data warehouse, but still the one of the major data sources of our data warehouse is a transactional database, where we already applied some, or we might have already applied some normalization. Why we use denormalization in data warehouse? So that we can get better performance and we can get the result in quicker amount of time. This way that query execution speed is much more if we prefer denormalization. The data that we are going to store in the data warehouse, it must have passed some validation rules. Historical as well as transactional data are stored in the data warehouse, where the data can come from variety of data sources which are called heterogeneous data. And this data warehouse can be used for two purposes. One is the transactional purpose and other is for analysis purpose. Applications of data warehouse. The data warehouse, it can be called or it can be considered as a database. It looks like a database. However, mostly this database will work for business intelligence purpose. This data warehouse is used to enhance an organization's performance that are key performance indicator. Mostly we use the data warehouse for analysis and query purpose instead of the transactional operations. The environment that deal with data warehouse are ETL tool, reporting tool, then RDBMS, statistical and a client analysis tool, and also the data mining tools, etc. The features of data warehouse are subject oriented, integrated, consistent, non-volatile, and it shows the evolution over time, that is the trend of the business. The data sources that used in data warehouse are base system, external applications, and third-party vendors, etc. So this is all about the data warehouse. Thank you.